Bitcoin is the most secure database in the world. That's why we have mining. To make sure it's not able to be copied and faked, we need to use something that cannot be created as well, and that's energy. In the real life, this is the one-way function. It goes easily one way, but very difficult the other way around. The purpose of my talk today is to give you analogies and basics of Bitcoin mining so you can become what I call a Bitcoin micro-educators for your communities. Bitcoin mining is like somebody gives you a Rubik's Cube, but you are blindfolded, you never saw the initial position of the colors, and they tell you, solve a Rubik's Cube, and if you do it, I give you $1,000. And you might be asking the guy, okay, but how can I solve it if I never saw the initial positions? Well, it's only guess, it's only trial and error, and you can solve it for hours, months, and years. And suddenly, after a couple of years, the guy watching you tells you, wow, now you solved it, now you want this $1,000. So this is one of the analogies what the Bitcoin mining really is. It's a random guessing without you knowing what is the initial setup, but you know how the target, how it should look like. When you solve the Rubik's Cube, everybody can verify you really solved it. So you did the proof of work, but it was random. It was just guessing. I want to talk about why there is a Bitcoin mining, because it's a process that's a little bit complicated, and the why is the most important part of it. So mining was designed to solve a problem. It's not just there to, let's have fun, let's waste energy, let's boil the ocean, It's really there to solve a problem of decentralized networks. So what was the problem? The problem was there was a lot of spam emails everywhere on the internet, because sending an email, it's costless. It doesn't cost you anything. And that's why we are receiving tons and tons of spam emails, because if the spammer sends 1 million emails, he will make some money and he can send another million emails. So Adam's idea was to make sure that when you're sending an email, it will be a little bit costly for you, but you're not going to pay for it with PayPal or with Bitcoin at the time, but you're gonna pay with your computing power, with energy that your computer gonna spend to solve a mathematical function. And when the computer solves it, then the email can be sent and everybody can verify that you really did the work, that your computer really did the work on that. The first problem, or the first something that mining solved, was a problem of transaction ordering. Because if you look here, this is a very vague and basic representation of a decentralized network. So imagine if Bitcoins could be spendable and you can just create Bitcoins on your computer for free. Suddenly, I can use one Bitcoin to pay in a beer shop, the same Bitcoin, the copy of it, to pay it in the pizza, and I send this information to different participants in the network. So one computer thinks, okay, this Bitcoin was spent for pizza, and he sends this information all around the network. But the other computer in the other part of the world thinks that the Bitcoin was spent for a beer. And suddenly there is a computer who is getting conflicting informations. Wow, like this Bitcoin was spent on pizza and on beer at the same time. It's not possible. The same as it's not possible to do it with cash, how to make sure that digital money are also not spendable 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and needed to create something that prevents us to create more and more transactions. With cash, it's pretty simple. Cash doesn't have this problem, because if I want to get or give $100 to somebody, I need to receive it first. I cannot give it without me receiving. This transaction, me getting $100 needs to be first, and me sending $100 needs to be second. So in cash, it's pretty easy. In digital world, it was difficult. One thing that mining solves is how to order the transactions. We have something called blockchain. I think you heard about that. But to make sure that nobody can create more blockchains and we have one single truth, the mining was introduced. What mining is doing is making sure that digital money is connected to the physical world in terms of energy. Why energy? Because that's something we cannot create out of whim. Because somebody can say, okay, let's create a protocol where if somebody want to order transactions, we will be voting who will be the one ordering. But with voting and with democracy, you know how it works. You can create fake emails and go voting, online many times and so on. So there are a bunch of other problems. To make sure it's not able to be copied and faked, we need to use something that cannot be created as well, and that's energy. That's how we have the anchor to reality, and this is why I don't like proof of stake, because I don't see a true anchor to reality. With mining, we have the anchor with the energy. The second problem that mining is solving is coin distribution. How to make sure that there is no one person owning all the coins and selling to everybody else, which is happening most of the time with new tokens, where the token holder or token creator has all the tokens and then he's selling to people on exchanges and getting money for it. Satoshi was inspired by gold, because gold is something that doesn't have a central bank. We can barely say that the central bank of gold is our planet Earth. And you cannot corrupt planet Earth. You need to do the work to get the gold out from the ground. You need to take a rake or plow, how it's called in English, and to dig it out from the ground. And the gold is distributed around the world in a decentralized manner. It's not like just one single place where the gold is, but you could find it in various places. Of course, we have some places where there is more gold, but in general, it's very distributed. Satoshi's idea was to really make sure that we have this distribution of money around many participants and not only in one single hand. And mining solves this because it makes sure that anybody around the world can participate. The rules are very straightforward, and if you spend energy, you can do it. This way, Satoshi made sure that he is not the one owning all the bitcoins, and he makes sure that anybody can get to them, but expending energy so the coins are distributed well. What mining solved is predictable money creation. Look at the governments. Right now in the US, they raised the debt ceiling for the 78th time. It's insane. Imagine you have a family, you have your own company, and you're borrowing money, and for a 78th time you claim like, yeah, I borrow some more, but I will return it in the future. It would never work. But suddenly, somehow the governments can do it, and they can print infinitely. And we as people have no control of it. And number 4, database security. What prevents anybody to creating a new version of blockchain, new version of the database? Well, mining again. With mining, we can make sure that a lot of people colluding together to doing 51% attack to making sure that they can create a new alternative version, which right now with Bitcoin mining is virtually or practically impossible. With all the miners around the world creating or having at least 50%, it's literally very hard. And making sure that the Bitcoin is the most secure database in the world, that's why we have mining. And something like a proof of work comes into place. The proof of work is mining. What it does, it's showing to everybody around the world that that particular miner every 10 minutes is the one who's receiving the rewards for their work, and they are the ones who can add transaction to the global database called blockchain. So that's the really crucial concept because anybody can verify that you really did the work. Another analogy that I use when I explain people what is Bitcoin is imagine that we here are having 10 playing dices that we can roll. Who will be the first one to put 5 dices with a number of 6, so 5 sixes at the one roll? That's the one who's gonna win the competition, and here's the one who's gonna, let's say, receive $100 for that work. So we start to play the game, we all of us roll the dice and look into the dice like who really have 5 sixes. If nobody, okay, we do it again and again and again. And suddenly after 10 minutes, somebody of you says, look, I made it, I rolled the dices and 5 of them are 6s. All of us can look at their dices and verify that he really did the work because he couldn't do it otherwise. He would need to roll it and we need to see that. If we verify that, we all can agree that that's the person who won the competition and go to a flip chart and write down all the transactions that happened there. That's how Bitcoin works. Every roughly 10 minutes, miners around the world finds the right solution and add a block to the blockchain. And this is what Bitcoin is doing on every 2 weeks. Bitcoin as a protocol looks into the history of mining for 2 weeks and count how often on average was every Bitcoin or every block mined. If it's more than 10 minutes, the Bitcoin will make it easier to find the number. If it is less than 10 minutes, it will make it harder, adding more 6s that you need to put in. So this is one of the analogies I use because you can explain easily the difficulty adjustment and you can explain, the verification of the solution. Everybody can look into it. So connecting mining to people when you're explaining to reality is really the best using analogies that people know. This is something how you can help people understand mining a little bit better. Another good analogy of the functions that happen in Bitcoin is using mixing of the colors. So maybe you heard something called the hash function. Hash function is something we call a one-way mathematical function. Okay, what is this function? How does it work? So how I explain it is imagine that I give you 2 colors to mix together. It's super easy to mix 2 colors together and get a third color. It's a very easy process. But imagine I give you 1 color and I asked you what 2 colors I mix together to get this third color. You cannot separate these 2 colors from each other from the result one. You need to try it. You need to really mix any random 2 colors, check if you have the same color that you wanted. If not, you need to repeat it again and again and again. In the real life, this is the one-way function. It goes easily one way, but very difficult the other way around. So If you're miners, be proud to boil the oceans, because in real life, you're not boiling the oceans. You're helping the planet to stabilize the grid. You're helping the planet to be more efficient with energy. And as Bitcoiners, you are also born to fix the money. So spread the education of Bitcoin and be a Bitcoin mining educators, and tell your family on the next lunch that Bitcoin will not boil the oceans. Thank you so much.